The sunlight on the garage floor looked calm, like any other late morning. Dust hung in the beams, floating through air that smelled faintly of motor oil and pine. But my chest felt tight, like the walls were leaning in. The toolbox sat open on the workbench, its red paint dulled from years of grease and age. I'd only opened it to find a wrench for a leaky faucet. Instead, I found the kind of secret that makes you stop breathing without meaning to. Dad's handwriting always leaned too far to the right, like it was racing ahead of itself. When I saw those familiar loops on the envelope wedged under a screwdriver tray, my first thought was that it was another one of his old lists, repairs he'd never gotten to before his heart gave out. But the paper inside wasn't a list. It was thicker, yellowed at the edges, with Last Will and Testament of Harold W. Danner typed in faded blue ink. I didn't sit down right away. I just stood there, half leaning against the workbench, the smell of oil and cold metal pushing up from the drawers. My sister Leah had handled everything after Dad died 2 months ago. She'd said the will had been simple. Everything split 50-50. I believed her. Of course I did. She'd been the one who stayed in town, helped him through chemo, coordinated hospice when things turned bad. I was the brother who flew in for long weekends and asked how things were holding up. But now, holding that folded paper in my hand, something about her voice during those weeks replayed differently in my head. Too smooth, too certain. I didn't open it there in the garage. Not right away. It felt wrong, like reading someone's diary. So I slid the envelope into the pocket of my flannel and went back inside, trying to focus on the leaky faucet that had started this whole thing. The house still smelled faintly like him. Coffee, sawdust, and that strange mix of tobacco and peppermint gum he chewed to hide the smoking from Mom years ago. In the kitchen, I twisted the faucet handle just to have something to do. The drip paused for 2 seconds, then started again, steady as a metronome. My hands felt too shaky for tools. I sat at the table instead, the envelope between my palms. It wasn't sealed. The flap had been tucked in loosely, like it had been opened before. The pages inside were crisp but fragile, stapled at the top corner. The date, May 14th, 2017, jumped out first. That was 3 years before he'd gotten sick. His signature, the same looping scrawl I'd seen on birthday cards, was at the bottom of page 3. The witness names were neighbors I recognized, and then the part that made my pulse slow to a crawl. To my son, Mark Danner, I leave the house at 118 Willow Lane, with all its furnishings, tools, and personal property therein. To my daughter, Leah Danner, I leave the sum of $50,000 from my savings account at First Colonial Bank. That was it. No equal split, no shared estate. The will she'd filed with the lawyer, the one we'd both signed off on, had been different. I remember her showing it to me at the kitchen counter after the funeral, saying, "It's what he wanted. Simple, half and half." So what was this? A draft? An older version he never replaced? Or had she replaced it? I read it twice, then a third time, tracing each line as if I'd missed something. The date, the notary stamp, the signatures, all there. My hands left faint smudges of oil on the paper. When I finally reached for my phone, my thumb hovered over her contact for a full minute before I tapped it. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mark," she said, her tone that same practiced calm she'd been using since the funeral. "Everything okay?" "I was fixing the sink," I said, hearing my own voice flatten. "Found something in Dad's garage." "Yeah? What'd you find?" "A will." Silence. The faint hum of her car air conditioner filled the space. "Mark, what do you mean, a will? You mean the will?" "No, this one's different." I heard her exhale sharply, like someone had pressed a bruise. "Where exactly did you find it?" she asked. "In his toolbox, bottom drawer." Okay, well, Dad was always writing things, you know that. Lists, drafts, notes. The official version's the one filed through Patterson's office. That's the thing, I said. This one's notarized, dated. Looks pretty official. Another pause. I could picture her pinching the bridge of her nose like she always did when something didn't go her way. Can you send me a picture of it? I hesitated. Sure. The photo I sent came through with the light from the kitchen window streaking across the page. I watched the typing dots appear, then vanish, then appear again. When her reply came, it was just one line. Mark, don't do anything rash. Please. That word, rash, hit me sideways, like she was already anticipating a reaction she knew she couldn't control. I didn't sleep much that night. The paper lay on the counter beside Dad's old coffee mug, the one with a chipped rim he'd refused to throw away. I kept staring at the signature, trying to convince myself there was an explanation that didn't involve deceit. But by 2 in the morning, my mind was running circles around itself. If she'd found this will before filing the other one, that would mean she'd knowingly ignored it, maybe even destroyed it. Maybe she'd gone to his lawyer with a fake update, claiming he'd wanted an even split. That could mean forgery, or at least tampering. I didn't want to think of my sister that way. Leah had been the responsible one all our lives. I was the one who left town, chasing jobs, missing holidays. Still, something didn't fit. By morning, I decided to verify everything before accusing her. I called the lawyer, David Patterson, the one who'd handled the estate paperwork. The receptionist said he wasn't in until noon, but she took my number. While I waited, I drove to Dad's place again. The garage felt colder than before, and the hum of the old beer fridge filled the silence. I searched the drawers again. Old receipts, a faded photo of Mom, a set of spark plugs still in the package. No other documents. In the back of the drawer, though, I found a small metal tin that used to hold screws. Inside, a set of keys on a brass ring, one of which had a label tape that read Shed. The shed had been locked for years. Leah said it was full of junk and not safe to go into. But the key turned easily. Inside, it smelled of mildew and soil. Dad's old workbench stood against the far wall, covered in paint cans and rags. On a high shelf, under a tarp, was a stack of folders wrapped in twine. I untied them one by one. Bank statements, insurance papers, and one envelope labeled in his handwriting, Estate, Original Documents. That's when my phone buzzed. Patterson's office. Mark, he said, his voice calm and slow. I understand you found something concerning? I did. An older will, I think. Different terms than the one filed. Can you tell me the date on it? May 14th, 2017. He was quiet for a long time. That matches the last one I prepared for your father. He never contacted me about a revision after that. So how did the one Leah filed happen? He sighed. I received a copy emailed from her the week after your father passed. She said he'd drafted an update himself last year. I asked for notarization details, but she said it was a home notary and she'd misplaced the stamp verification. Given that both of you signed the consent acknowledgement, I assumed you'd reviewed it. My stomach dropped. I didn't review anything. She showed me a PDF for 5 seconds on her phone at the funeral home. I see, he said quietly. Then, Mr. Danner, we might have a problem. By the time I hung up, the shed felt smaller, the air heavy with damp wood and betrayal. I texted Leah again. We need to talk. In person. She replied 10 minutes later. Come by the house at 6. Please don't make this ugly. The phrasing, don't make this ugly, felt like another warning, like she knew something I didn't. I spent the rest of the day photocopying the will, scanning it with my phone, backing it up 3 different ways. I wasn't sure what I was preparing for, but part of me already knew. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Her house sat on the edge of town, a white single-story with hydrangeas lining the porch. When I pulled up, the sun was low, the air sticky with the first hint of summer rain. She opened the door before I could knock. "Mark," she said softly, "come in." The living room looked the same as always, tidy, scented with that lavender spray she used on the couch cushions. There were photos of her kids on the mantel, all framed in neat silver. But I couldn't stop noticing the empty spot where Dad's photo had been. She gestured for me to sit. "I know what you think you found." "Do you?" I asked. "Yes." Her jaw tightened. "It's not what you think." She reached for a folder on the coffee table and slid it across to me. Inside was a copy of the will she'd filed, the equal split version. Same signatures, same formatting, except the date at the top read April 2023. I scanned the page. "He was in hospice then," I said quietly. She nodded. "He told me he wanted things even. Said it would avoid conflict. He didn't want you saddled with the house maintenance while I got stuck with taxes and nothing else." "So he told you that, but never his lawyer?" "He didn't want to bother him. He said he'd handle it himself. I helped him type it out." I stared at her. "Did he sign it?" "Yes," she said, but her eyes flicked away. "He did." "Leah, this signature." I pointed to it. "It's identical. Like pixel identical to the one on the 2017 copy." Her face went still. I waited. Finally, she said, "I didn't want to lose the house, okay? He always loved you more. You got the college fund, the trips, the freedom. I stayed here cleaning up his messes." Her voice cracked. "You don't get to play the victim now." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Rain tapped against the window, soft and uneven. "I'm not trying to take anything from you," I said finally. "But lying about his will—" "I didn't lie," she snapped. "I corrected a mistake. He wanted it fair. He told me that the night before he died." "And you thought forging his signature would make it fair?" She turned away, shoulders tight. "You can't prove that." "Maybe not on my own, son," I said, "but Patterson can, and the bank records, and the notary logs." Her hand flew to her mouth. "You wouldn't." I stood. "Leah, I just wanted the truth." When I left, the rain had started to fall in sheets. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel until my hands ached. Part of me wanted to let it go. She had kids, a mortgage, a life built on the story she'd told herself about fairness. But another part, the part that still remembered Dad teaching me to measure twice before cutting once, knew that letting it go would mean bearing his intentions twice over. Back home, I laid both wills side by side under a desk lamp. The signatures, identical down to the swirl of the final R. I pulled out my phone and started searching for forensic document examiners in the area. If she'd rewritten Dad's legacy, I wasn't going to let her keep it that way. At 2 a.m, my phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the text. "Meet me tomorrow at the diner. 9 a.m. I found something you need to see." No name. But I knew the number. Leah. And for the first time in weeks, I couldn't tell if I felt dread or relief. It was 9:03 on a Thursday morning. The diner's neon sign flickered against a cloudy sky, reflecting off the puddles in the parking lot. I sat in my car a minute longer than I needed to, engine still running, watching a waitress wipe down the front window with a rag that left wet streaks. Inside, people looked ordinary, construction workers, an older couple splitting pancakes, but the air in my chest didn't feel ordinary at all. It felt like standing outside a courtroom before a verdict. Leah was already there, in a corner booth by the window, hair pulled into a messy bun, coffee untouched. She looked smaller than I remembered, like someone who hadn't slept. When I slid into the seat across from her, she didn't look up right away, just kept staring into her cup. "You came," she said finally. "Yeah," I said. "You said you found something." She nodded, reached into her tote bag, and pulled out a small brown envelope. the kind Dad used for bank deposits. This was in the attic, she said quietly. I found it after you left yesterday. I took it, feeling the weight. Light, maybe 2 or 3 pages. The flap wasn't sealed. Inside were folded sheets of lined notebook paper, the first covered in Dad's unmistakable handwriting. It wasn't another will. It was a letter. Leah, if I don't make it through this next round of treatment, there are a few things I need you to know. The house should go to Mark. He'll take care of it. You and the kids will get the savings, the insurance, and my stocks. It may not look even on paper, but I want him to have the place. It's got his hands all over it. Don't let that make you angry. You've had to carry more than your share. I know that. But this is what makes sense. You'll both be fine. Take care of each other. There was no date, but the tone, his mix of guilt and practicality, was painfully familiar. I looked up at her. You found this after you changed the will? Her eyes glistened. No, before. Last year. I couldn't stand it, watching you come and go while I stayed. He said he wanted us to take care of each other, but he never really saw how tired I was. So you thought rewriting his will would fix that? I thought I was correcting a wrong he didn't have time to fix himself, she said, her voice trembling. You always got the house. Figuratively, literally, the tools, the attention. I was the one left to scrape by. The waitress came by to refill our coffees, glancing at the tension but saying nothing. When she walked away, Leah finally exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath since I sat down. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said. I thought if you signed the acknowledgement and everything went through quietly, no one would question it, except I found the original, I said. She nodded, almost a smile, small, bitter. Of course you did. Dad hid everything in plain sight. You were the only one who knew how he thought. Her words landed heavier than I expected. She wasn't wrong. When I was a kid, I used to help him fix things in that same garage. Shelves, wiring, the mower that never ran right. He'd tell me where he kept the extra screws, the hidden keys, the backup copies. I'd learned his patterns. She must have known deep down that if anyone could find the truth, it would be me. I'm not here to punish you, Leah, I said after a long silence. But you forged a legal document. That's not something we can just sweep under the rug. She leaned back, pressing her hands over her face. You're going to report me, aren't you? I don't know, I said honestly. I talked to Patterson. He knows there's an issue. If I don't say something, he probably will. She let out a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. God, Mark, you always did everything by the book. Dad raised me that way. Yeah, she said, voice sharpening. He raised you his way. I just got whatever was left. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. We sat in silence long enough for the waitress to refill our cups again. The rain outside softened to a drizzle, tracing faint rivers down the window beside us. Finally, Leah reached into her bag again and pulled out another envelope. This one thicker, heavier. This is the other thing I found, she said. Inside were bank statements, Dad's savings account, showing transfers to her name starting 6 months before he died. Not small amounts either. 5,000 here, 10,000 there. He wanted me to have it, she said before I could ask. He said it was to help with the kids. It wasn't enough to match the house, but it was something. The numbers matched roughly the 50,000 mentioned in the 2017 will. He just started giving it early. It complicated everything. So he did try to even things out, I said quietly. She nodded. I didn't steal from you, Mark. I just couldn't face another round of him picking you first. I thought if I made it legal, maybe I could finally stop feeling like the afterthought. Her voice cracked again. I know what I did was wrong. I just didn't know how to live with the unfairness. I rubbed my temples. The coffee had gone cold. Outside, A car splashed through a puddle, spraying mist against the window. "What do you want me to do?" I asked finally. She swallowed. "Just don't take it to court. Please, I'll give you the house. I'll fix everything with Patterson. I just need you not to destroy my life." I looked down at the letter, at Dad's uneven scrawl. He'd wanted us to take care of each other. Instead, here we were, two adults negotiating guilt over breakfast coffee. "I'll need proof," I said. "That, you'll make it right." "I'll sign whatever you want," she said quickly. "Just don't tell the kids. They think I'm decent." Her voice broke on the last word. I nodded slowly. "I won't tell them, but we'll do this properly. Patterson will draft a correction. You'll sign it in front of a witness." "Okay," she whispered. For the first time in weeks, she looked like my sister again. Tired, flawed, but human. Still, trust doesn't come back with signatures. After we left the diner, I drove straight to Patterson's office with both versions of the will and the letter. He took copies, promised to open a probate review, and said he'd contact a handwriting expert. "It's not about punishment," I told him. "Just the truth." He nodded. "That's usually how punishment starts, Mr. Danner." The words stuck with me. That night, I couldn't shake the image of Leah sitting there with her hands shaking over her coffee cup. She wasn't malicious, just desperate. And desperation had a way of looking a lot like cruelty when you were on the receiving end. A week later, Patterson called. "The examiner confirmed it," he said. "The 2017 will is genuine. The 2023 version was digitally altered, copied signature, edited text, no legal validity." I sat at the kitchen table, the toolbox still open on the counter where this had all started. "What happens now?" I asked. "She'll need to sign a withdrawal statement, and the property title will revert to you. The estate will be amended accordingly." "And Leah? She won't face charges if you don't press them." I closed my eyes. "I won't." That should have been the end of it. But 2 days later, I got a call from the county assessor's office. The woman on the line sounded confused. "Mr. Danner, we just received a quitclaim deed transferring the Willow Lane property to a third party, filed yesterday." "What third party?" "A Thomas J. Keller." The name meant nothing to me. When I hung up, my hands were shaking. Leah must have filed it before signing the correction. Sold the house out from under both of us. I called her. Straight to voicemail. Then I drove. The house looked emptier than it ever had. Curtains gone, the porch bare. A for sale sign lay on its side in the grass, rain damp and bent. I checked the mailbox, empty except for a real estate flyer. The lock on the front door had been changed. I circled around to the backyard, mud sucking at my shoes. The shed was still there, sagging but solid. Inside, the shelves were stripped bare, except for the old coffee can of nails and a cracked photo frame. The photo was of Leah and Dad, smiling in the garden, arms around each other. She must have come here one last time. I stared at it until the sky went dark. The next morning, Patterson confirmed my fear. "She sold the property to a buyer under an LLC," he said grimly. "His transaction cleared before the probate correction was processed. We can contest it, but it'll be messy." "So she's gone?" "She withdrew her kids from school yesterday," he said. "No forwarding address." For the first time, I didn't feel angry, just hollow. Dad's will, Leah's letter, the house, it all blurred together into one truth I couldn't unsee. Every one of us had tried, in our own way, to rewrite the story he left behind. And somewhere, between the signatures and the secrets, the family we'd been died too. The letter felt cold through the thin paper, like it had been sitting somewhere dark for days. I found it inside my mailbox the following Monday morning, tucked between an electric bill and a grocery coupon. No return address, just my name in shaky handwriting, Leah's handwriting. I stood on the porch for a while before opening it. The neighborhood was quiet except for a lawnmower down the street. The smell of cut grass drifted up the hill, too clean for how heavy my stomach felt. When I finally tore the envelope open, a few bills fluttered out. Cash, 20s and 50s, along with a single folded sheet. Mark, I know what I did was unforgivable. The house isn't mine to sell, and I know you'll fix it. You always do. I needed the money for the kids. The sale isn't permanent. The buyer was just someone who owed me a favor. You can undo it once things settle. I'm sorry for everything. Don't look for me. Tell Patterson I'll sign whatever he needs when I can. Just give me time. Leah. No signature this time. Just her name, written smaller than usual. For a long moment, I didn't move. The bills in my hand felt dirty somehow, too light to represent the weight of what she'd done. Then I went inside, laid the note on the table, and stared at the dent her handwriting had left in the paper. She hadn't written "if you'll fix it." She'd written "you'll fix it," like it was a foregone conclusion. Maybe it always had been. I took the letter to Patterson that afternoon. His office smelled like copier toner and lemon disinfectant. He read it in silence, tapping the edge of the paper against the desk. "She's not wrong," he said finally. "A quitclaim deed can be reversed if fraud or duress is involved, especially if she didn't have the legal right to sell in the first place. So we can get the house back?" "Yes," he said. "But it'll take time and money, filing fees, hearings, an attorney to challenge the LLC transfer. Months, maybe." I nodded slowly. "Do it." "Mark, I have to ask, do you want her prosecuted?" I looked at the letter again. The tremor in her writing was the same one she'd had when she signed her first mortgage, when she was scared but trying not to show it. "No," I said. "Just find the truth." That night, I went back to Dad's house again. I didn't have a key anymore, but the back window still stuck the way it always had. It slid open with a groan. Inside, everything smelled faintly of dust and rain. The rooms echoed more than I remembered. The old recliner was gone, so was the clock he used to wind every Sunday. But on the counter sat one thing she'd left behind: his toolbox. I ran my hand over the lid, the metal cold against my fingers, the same spot where I'd first found the will. I half expected another envelope to appear, another secret wedged under the wrenches, but there was nothing left to find. For a second, I thought about taking the box with me, but it didn't feel right. So I left it there, exactly where it had been. In the days that followed, Patterson began tracing the sale. The LLC that bought the house, Harbor Street Holdings, was a shell, registered under a single name: Thomas J. Keller. The address led to a P.O. box in a neighboring county. It didn't take long for the pattern to emerge. Keller wasn't a stranger. He'd been Leah's old boss from her last job at a dental office. I found an old photo of them on social media. Company picnic, her kids sitting on her lap, him grinning with a beer in hand. Patterson's voice over the phone was dry. "Looks like he's been in some financial trouble himself. Maybe she sold to him to cover a debt, maybe a personal favor. Hard to tell without talking to her." "She told me not to look for her," but I said. "Are you going to listen?" I didn't answer. By the second week, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to her old place first. Empty, shades drawn, mail overflowing in the box. Then to the kids' school. The secretary said they'd transferred out of state. No forwarding details. Finally, I went to Keller's address listed on a property record, a small auto shop on the edge of town, the kind of place with more rust than paint. He was there, leaning against a pickup, cigarette dangling from his mouth. Mid-50s, sunburnt neck, smirk like he'd already decided who I was before I opened my mouth. "You Mark Danner?" he asked. "Yeah." "Figured you'd show up. She said you might." He flicked the cigarette away and gestured toward the office. "You want to talk business? Let's do it inside." The office smelled like burnt coffee and engine oil. Papers were stacked everywhere, some of them stamped with bank logos. "She tell you why she sold the house?" He asked. "She said she needed money. For her kids." He snorted. "That's part of it." He pulled open a drawer, took out a manila folder, and dropped it on the desk. "Your sister borrowed 30 grand from me last year. Said it was for medical bills. Never paid it back. I didn't want to ruin her credit, so she offered me something better, property. She didn't own that property." He shrugged. "Not my problem. She had the deed, the signature, the notarization. Looked clean enough. She forged all that." He leaned back. "Maybe, but she paid off half the loan after the sale. Then she left town." "Where?" He smiled, slow and mean. "Told me she was heading west. Said she had family there." I blinked. "We don't have family out west." "Well," he said, "maybe you do now." Back in my truck, I sat with the engine running, rain tapping the windshield. 30 grand. She'd risked everything for 30 grand. It made me angrier than anything else had. The smallness of it. The sheer pettiness of the ruin. Not greed, not malice, just desperation and cheap bills and bad decisions. Still, I called Patterson. "Found him," I said. "Got a copy of the loan agreement. I'll send photos." He sighed. "That helps. If we can prove financial duress, it strengthens your case." "Duress?" I said. "She did it willingly." He paused. "Sometimes people's reasons make more sense on paper than in person." Weeks blurred together. The probate process reopened. The title dispute went into review. I filled out forms, sat through hearings, gave statements. It all felt mechanical, like tightening bolts on something that would never really run smooth again. Then one afternoon, Patterson called again. "We've located her," he said. My breath caught. "Where?" "Montana. Small town outside Helena. She's using her maiden name. Leah Danner, no alias. Sheriff's office reached out after a welfare check request. Looks like she's been working at a diner there. She left your contact number as next of kin." "Welfare check?" "She's okay," he said, "but she wants to talk to you." 2 days later, my phone rang. "Mark?" Her voice was small, distant, but unmistakable. "Yeah, I'm here." "I guess you know everything now," she said. "About Keller? About the house?" "I do. I didn't want to drag you into it. I thought I could fix it before you found out. You sold our father's house, Leah." "I know." Her breath caught on the other end. "But you got it back, didn't you?" "Not yet. I'll sign whatever you need. I can't come back there right now. The kids are starting to settle. They don't need to see me in court." "Then what do you want from me?" A pause, then softly, "Forgiveness." The word hung there, like something fragile that didn't belong in the air. I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I didn't know if I had it in me. I thought about Dad, about the smell of sawdust in his workshop, about how he'd always said, "A thing's only broken if you give up fixing it." Maybe he'd meant people too. "Leah," I said finally, "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I'll make sure the house is handled. You don't need to worry about that." "Thank you," she whispered. "And Mark?" "Yeah? Don't hold on to this forever. You'll drown in it." Then the line went quiet. I didn't hear from her again after that. But I didn't need to. The letter, the will, the sale, they all lived in one place now. The house. By summer, the court ruled in my favor. The property came back under my name, the title clean again. I walked through the empty rooms once more. Bare walls, echoing floors, sunlight hitting the dust in the air just like it had that first day. I didn't move in. I couldn't. Instead, I fixed the faucet, replaced the leaky roof, cleaned out the shed. I kept the toolbox, and when I locked the door that last time, I left the key under the mat. For her. "You kept it standing," the man said, brushing sawdust from his palms. Most folks would have sold by now. I looked up from where I was tightening the last bolt on the porch railing. The contractor, some guy named Dylan, had been helping me shore up the foundation for the insurance inspection. His voice carried that easy tone of someone who didn't know the history of the wood he was touching. Selling wasn't the problem, I said quietly. Letting it rot was. He nodded like he understood, but there's no way he could have. The house wasn't just a structure. It was a ledger, every wall recording what had been taken and what had been returned. When Dylan's truck pulled away that evening, I stayed on the porch as the sunset pooled across the driveway. The house looked whole again, fresh paint, clean gutters, repaired roof, but something about it still felt borrowed. It had been 6 months since I'd heard from Leah. The court paperwork was done, the title secured, taxes paid. On paper, everything was resolved. But silence isn't closure. It's just the space guilt moves into when you stop arguing. Patterson said she'd signed the last set of documents from Montana, notarized through her local bank. She hadn't contested the case or asked for money. Just her name off the deed. You should be able to move on now, Beats. He'd said, handing me the final file. But that wasn't what I wanted. Moving on meant accepting that the last conversation we'd ever have ended with her asking for forgiveness I didn't know how to give. Every morning, I drove out to Willow Lane before work. I'd park at the end of the drive, drink my coffee, and listen to the house settle. The creaks, the faint hum of the fridge I'd replaced. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking out loud, like Dad was still somewhere in the rafters. You picked the wrong executor, I'd mutter. You made her the caretaker and me the outsider, and look what it did. There was a comfort in blaming him, even though he wasn't here to defend himself. But one morning in late November, something changed. There was a letter taped to the front door. It wasn't from Leah this time. The envelope was cream-colored, the handwriting unfamiliar. Inside was a short note. Mr. Danner, I'm writing on behalf of Ms. Leah Danner. She has recently entered an inpatient recovery program in Helena. As part of her restitution plan, she has requested that any funds or property related to the disputed estate be formally transferred back to you. She also asked me to deliver the enclosed item. Respectfully, Dr. Sandra Lively, program coordinator. Tucked behind the note was a folded photo. It was the three of us, me, Leah, and Dad, standing in front of this very porch. He'd just finished painting it. Our faces were streaked with white smudges, his hand resting on each of our shoulders. I hadn't seen that photo in over 15 years. For the first time in months, I sat down on the porch steps and let the quiet fill me. There's a kind of stillness that only exists after everything's burned out. The phase after anger, after grief, when all that's left is whatever truth survived. And the truth was simple. Leah had been wrong, but she'd also been lost long before she picked up a pen. Dad's letter, the one she'd twisted into justification, came back to me line by line. Take care of each other. Maybe that's what she was finally trying to do now, in her own broken way. A week later, I got another envelope, this time from the program itself. Inside was a form, authorization for communication with family members. Leah had checked a single box, open for correspondence, no note, no message, just her signature. It took me 2 days to figure out what to write. Leah, I got your photo. The house is fixed. The porch is holding. I don't know if you'll believe this, but I don't hate you anymore. Dad wanted me to take care of the place, not to hold it hostage against you. When you're ready, it's here. I'll leave the key where it always was. I signed it simply, Mark. No return address, just my number. Months passed. Spring came early that year, the kind where the air smells like wet dirt and old promises. The house stood quiet, freshly painted, waiting. Then, one afternoon in March, I drove out and found a car parked halfway up the drive. The door was open, engine off. A woman stood near the porch steps, her hair longer now, streaked with gray. Leah. She didn't move when I got out, just watched me like she wasn't sure she was allowed to. "Looks good," she said finally. "Thanks. You fixed the porch." "Yeah, it needed it." We stood there a long time, both of us facing the house like it was a third person in the conversation. "I'm not staying," she said. "Just wanted to see it once more." "That's fine. I signed everything. The program's helping me pay Keller back. He's being investigated, too." I nodded. "Good." She glanced at the door, then back at me. "You left the key where it always was." "Yeah," I said. "Figured you might need it someday." Her lips trembled, then curved into a small, fragile smile. "You always did know where to leave things." She didn't step inside, just stood there a while longer, eyes moving over the porch, the window, the roof line. Then she said, "He'd be proud of you, you know, not of what happened, but of what you did after." "I don't know," I said. "He'd probably just ask why I didn't fix the faucet sooner." She laughed. Quiet, real, the kind that sounded like her old self for just a second. Then she turned toward her car. "Take care, Mark." "You too, Leah." She paused at the driver's side door. "I left something for you in the mailbox." When I opened it, after she'd driven away, there was only a small key inside, taped to a note. "For when you're ready to forgive yourself, too." That night, I sat in the kitchen with the letter and the key under the same lamp where I'd once compared two wills side by side. There are moments in life when closure doesn't look like justice. It looks like surrender. I realized I didn't need to forgive her to stop hating her, and I didn't need to keep the house to honor him. What mattered was that somewhere between betrayal and repair, we both found a way to stop lying, to Dad, to each other, to ourselves. So I made a decision. 2 months later, I signed the paperwork transferring the property to the town's habitat program. They turned it into transitional housing for single parents, people trying to rebuild, same as we were. I kept the toolbox, though. It sits in my own garage now, still a little dented, still red. Every time I open it, I think about how some things don't need to be replaced. They just need someone patient enough to find what's worth keeping. I haven't heard from Leah since that spring, but sometimes I get a postcard. A photo of mountains, or her kids, or nothing but a blank card with the words, "Still standing." I guess that's all either of us ever wanted. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.